Mobb Deep recently dropped their final ever album called Infinite, and of course it's absolutely amazing. It's got those classic 90s boom bap beats that Mobb Deep were famous for, and it also sprinkles in some modern production techniques as well, which makes it super interesting to listen to. So as usual, I'm going to break down the method behind their production across 3 different beats. Let's dive straight into it. Okay, so the first beat, we're going to be basing it on Havoc's production style. Obviously the new album has a mixture of The Alchemist and Havoc producing. Now the main thing you want to keep in mind when it comes to Havoc's production is what I like to call the 3 Gs. That's gritty, grimy, gangster. We're going to start off making the drums by using a break and just chopping it up and recording our own drum pattern in. So this is a drum break that I've got from the Lunch 77 Havoc and Mobb Deep drum kit. It's really good. I'll put a link down to it in the description. So as far as breaks go, this is already perfect as it is, but I want to just switch up the pattern a bit. There's a lot of noise and texture in there, which is really great. We want to keep all that dirt in there. So we've just put it on a MIDI track, went to slice, and I've sliced by transient, and then we end up with some good hits. So yeah, we only need like 3 or 4 of these hits to make a good break. First thing I'm going to do though is just transpose it down a couple of semitones. That's something that you'll hear in a lot of Mobb Deep beats, is the drum breaks are pitched down, gives it a lot more grit and makes it darker. Working at 95 BPM for this one, typical head bouncing boom bap. So using that break and recording it in live gives it that natural human feel. The break already has it, but when you're doing your own new pattern, you want to keep that sense of real life rhythm. So you can see here things off grid. We've got the snare coming in early. You've got things all over the place, and that's just going to be really important to the overall natural vibe. Now I just want the drums to hit a little bit harder straight off the bat because it's a little bit tame. So I'm just going to put on OTT. I love to put this on my drum group no matter what sort of beat or genre I'm making. I highly suggest OTT. Obviously Ableton has it built in, but Xfer, the company that does Serum, also has their own version of it, and it's just really easy to use. I just literally turn upward and downward down to 0 and use the depth to control how loud. Cool, now we need to start layering the drums. I think this is probably the most important thing when it comes to doing your drums, to make sure that they smack. So I want to do a kick first. I want to layer in like a more subby kick or an 808 even. So we'll just copy the MIDI track down. We'll go in and we'll just delete everything besides the kick layer. And then we'll just jump it up so it's in middle C. And then we just grab a kick from our Mobb Deep pack. So now together, and what we can do as well actually is put a track spacer, sidechain it to the second kick, the new kick, bring down to around 120 or so. So now when that kick hits, the lower end of the drum break will duck a little bit. It's just about these small little things we can do just to make sure that everything hits really, really hard. Next, we'll add in like a subtle hi-hat. And we'll keep that quantized and on the grid, so it just has a bit of a contrast with the rest of the drum break we recorded in. And then we've got this little shaker, which can work as like a perk sound almost. Nice. And then a snare just to add a bit more snap to the current snare that's there. It's a little bit dull otherwise. And then finally, let's just do another hi-hat, which we'll just record in live just to add a bit more pace to it and speed things up and give a little bit more high end to the overall drums. And And again, we're playing that in live, so everything's sort of wonky and off grid. Now everything will hopefully fit together to create like a bit of a messy, dirty, drum break. Okay, so now we've got the drums sorted. We can just add a bit more processing to them just to get them to the right level that we want. So first, let's add on some RC20 just to make them grittier. I like to use this tape drums preset, which is from, I think, Covey. And then you can just mess about with the dry and wet as you need. Then finally for the drums, I'm going to throw on Articulate. This is one of my favorite new plugins that is really good for transient shaping. You see what I mean? If you take out all the release. Okay, so now let's move on to the melody. Now when it comes to Mobb Deep beats, I like to use a piano a lot of the time. Obviously Shook Ones Part 2 is based on sampling a detuned piano. So we're going to start off with Addictive Keys. And I like to turn on the sustain. I just find it easier to play with sustain. It makes me feel like I can play piano properly, And then we can just play the drums and come up with like some really simple things. But to be honest, at the end of the day, we don't need like a complex progression or anything. It's just usually better to stick to one chord or one note and then just resample that. So then with something as simple as that, we'll bounce it to a new track and then you can manipulate the audio in any which way. Obviously when it's audio, we can have a bit more freedom with it. So let's like pitch it down a bit. Obviously pitching down tends to make things sound darker. And in fact, let's copy this to a new track and mute the original because I want to see how this will sound maybe without those specific notes. So I think that sounds pretty cool because it's got a little bit of dissonance because we've chopped off the part where the notes change, but it carries on into the sample. So it's got a bit of an eerie nature to it. So let's process this. I'm going to start off with some Bit Crusher. This is a free KHS plugin. So you can really downsample stuff nicely. Even automating this as well is a good shout. But we'll leave it around here for now. And then let's throw on some FabFilter Saturn just to add a bit more to the mid-high end. And then finally some Pitch Drift from Baby Audio. This is a free plugin, but it's really cool to add some pitch drift. You can be subtle with it. Cool. I think we've got the perfect basis now to continue with the melody. Now that we've got that foundation, I can start hearing in my head what I want the next components to be. So I want to hear a string in this, something that's just playing throughout the whole thing, like high pitched. We can just find any sort of string. Any stems from sample packs usually has something like this. This one from Loop Garden seems perfect. So we just have to pitch it up, 5 semitones, I think. In fact, I want to change the pitch of this whole thing. Let's go down, like even darker. For some reason, when you just like mess around with the pitch on your melody, it will suddenly sound better just because it's new to your ears. Cool, let's add in another piano now to do something like higher pitched and twinkly. That's usually good for getting like some creepy and eerie sounds in. Sounding really good. Next up, we need to throw in a sample. I want to throw in a sample that can just add more sort of grit and texture to things while also complementing the melody that we've got going now. So after a good 30 minutes of searching for something, this is what I found. It's really, really subtle and it's similar to the string that we've got, but I think it will work together for some more dissonance. That swelling is so good. I just love the tension that builds in the beat. We've pitched it up a couple semitones. And then for the EQ, you can see, again, just leaving a very specific part of it. And now let's see if it all fits together or not. I like that. It's a little bit weird, a little bit off-putting, a little bit eerie, and yeah, that's what we wanted. Now, of course, we need a bass just to make everything fit together and sound like it's, you know, complete. I'm considering using an 808. Obviously, the old school boom bap beats are going to be generally bass guitars or like a sub sound, but I think an 808 on this will hit hard. On the new Mobb Deep album, you're going to hear a lot more 808s than you would have, 25 years ago. So yeah, really simple. We're just doing the root note, the F, and then jump up an octave at the end every couple of bars. And that's it. We just have to make sure we do the side chain. And also to add some grit and saturation, let's put on some decapitator. For the most part, that's it. There's a couple of things I want to finish off in this beat that will hopefully just take it to the final level. The first is going to be some more texture. We've obviously got texture within the sample. We've got texture within the drums. We can add a little bit more if we want to. And I'm going to just throw in a bit of vinyl crackle. And we'll just have that sitting underneath everything. And then finally, we just want to add a little bit of processing to the entire melody group. Firstly, I'm going to do another side chain via track spacer just to make sure that 808 just really comes through. And then finally some RC20, again, grit it up a little bit, put a bit more noise. And then yeah, this is basically the final beat. Okay, now let's move on to Alchemist beats on the Mobb Deep album. So obviously Alchemist is someone I've covered a lot on this channel. Check out one of the previous videos that I've done where I've dived into his sort of method. It's basically the same sort of thing for Mobb Deep type beats, except for he leans much darker. Alchemist is really good at doing like really beautiful beats because the samples he picks are so beautiful sometimes. But as we all know, he's also really good at that sinister, eerie vibe. Case in point, Kendrick Lamar, Meet the Grahams. So we want to do something more like that. Again, we're going to start off doing the drums, drag in the drum break. Again, we can make it darker by pitching it down a little bit. And this drum break has got that bounce and groove we need because of that like ghost kick. That's what gives it the swing. That's really important in a lot of boom bap beats, to be honest, especially in the Alchemist stuff. And now again, we want to layer the drums. So in terms of the snare, for example, I want something with a bit of snap to go with it, if that makes sense. And yeah, because I'm layering it with this break, I've just made sure that it matches where the snare hits and the break. So the first one is on grid, but the second one is ever so slightly fast. So I've just lined that up perfectly so you don't get like a weird double hit or like flange effect almost. Now for the hi-hat, I just want a bit more high-end because the break has a hat that's a little bit dull, as normal drum breaks tend to be. So we'll just use this 808 hi-hat. And again, just gonna make sure that it's perfectly lined up with the hat from the break so that everything seems like cohesive and like it's all the same drum groove. Pretty simple, but again, just bringing this drum break to life a bit. Then the final part of the drums, we want to add a bit more subbiness to the kick at specific points, and this will give it this really classic boom bap vibe, and you'll know what I mean. Just like that. So we're not going to layer it with the ghost notes, we're just going to layer it with like the main hits. So I'll turn this down quite a bit because it's more the feeling you want to get, like you want it to feel that like in your chest. You don't really want to hear it because then we will end up probably adding a bass later. So now the fun part of doing the Alchemist beats is the melodic sampling. In this case I've got this Lalo Schifrin Dolor. So you can probably imagine already what we want to do with that. It's got that cool arpeggio piano. If we slow it down, it will be really cool and we can pitch it down. So what I like to do is unwarp it and then pitch it down so that it drags out. You know when you see those like tracklib videos when they show how samples were turned into beats on YouTube and TikTok, and that's what they do, they stretch it. It's like a really cool effect. We don't need the whole sample, we can just disappear most of it and then just loop 1 or 2 bars. Yeah, so when we have that bass note change, it just mixes it up. If you don't have that change in the bass note or a chord change, then it can be a little bit stale. So the sample is quite dirty, so we're going to need to process it. Let's just EQ it firstly. We'll take out the low end and some of that mud. Yeah, even like some of the high end, it's got a lot of like noise and crackle, which isn't really needed. We can get even more surgical with Pro Q3. And an easy way to hear where those like weird resonance frequencies are is you just go like that. We'll just put the headphone on, turn it up. So you get all those disgusting parts. Yeah, that's really not nice. Then just turn the gain down. And you can do that on like any bits that are like annoying, which is quite a bit of this sample, to be honest. Jesus. And then obviously the easiest way, thanks to modern technology, is using a plugin like Soothe 2. I like to use this preset Low Mid Rescue. So if we put the delta on, you can hear what it's getting rid of. And then we can just increase the depth. You don't want to do too much because it's not bad to have texture and dirt and mud in there. It's just we don't want too much of it. So just be a little bit subtle with it. So now all together, little gap at the end, partly just to mix it up so that it's not always just the same thing, but also because that gap will allow us to insert something interesting later on. But for now we want to layer another sample in. A big part of the Alchemist production style for boom bap beats, even Havoc's as well, actually to be honest most boom bap producers, is that collage style of sampling. So not just having one sample but combining different samples to create some insane textures. I just want the beginning hit. I don't need the rest of it. We're gonna EQ out a lot. We really want just sort of that area. So obviously the more of the frequencies that we keep in, the more dissonant it will be. In this case, I don't think that it works too well. It depends how clean you want the beat, really. So I want to put in one more sample that will go, you know, at the end of a bar, you know, in that gap. So that ending bit with the tremolo is perfect. Again, we want to pitch it to make sure it fits. Perfect. Again, EQ, we're going to just take out a lot of the frequencies. Now we need to put in the bass. Again, simplicity. We've got a sample that gives us the answer. We don't really have to figure out something special. We can just follow the really simple 1 or 2 notes that are in the sample. I just want to add in one more element which I really like about the Alchemist beats, especially in like the Alfredo albums, is the cinematic aspect. So throwing in some sort of speech from a movie or something like that.
Here he is, a mole. You won't often see a mole. Most kinds live underground all their lives and can't even see if they're brought out into the light. Look at those short, strong front legs that he uses for digging. And that long, sharp nose that tells him where his breakfast is. He'd much rather get back to his home underground.
Okay, for the final beat, let's just basically go over like the classic 90s boom bap method that was used in making things like Shook Ones Part 2. Now, this video is all over online on like TikTok and YouTube, so you've probably seen how it was done, but let's put it into practice and make our own version. So here's a drum break, just a classic drum break from a song. Pretty simple. I just want to use one bit of the drums and I need to fit it to my tempo. And again, it's the same method of unwarping the sample, just detune or speed up to get it fitting what we need. So you can see the grid. We just got to slowly increase it until it just lines up. There we go. So now what I do is just take out all of that because we don't need it. So I like that speed. It's now fitting to the grid, but obviously it's a bit too pitched up. We need to pitch it down to get it darker, right? So now we can warp it, and now we can just pitch it down. You don't need to go too much. Now it loops perfectly, drum's done. Now, again, the fun part is trying to find a sample. Obviously, Shook Ones Part 2 has that infamous Herbie Hancock piano sample, Jessica, which is then really, really detuned. It's pretty insane how Havoc did that, to be honest. So here's a song that I've sampled quite a few times in different styles. It's one of my favorite tracks to sample because of the piano and vocals in it. Sai Yoshiko, Taiji no Yume. There's a really cool intro bit before the drums and vocals and whatever comes in. So we're going to chop out all of that. We just need literally the intro, the piano. That first little snippet, that first bar is what I want. Once that's pitched down, it's going to sound dark. And we'll chop out that silence there. Again, we just pitch down. And we're going to pitch down drastically with this one. See how nice that piano little trill sounds. Oh my god. We'll warp it, and now we can maybe pitch it up a little bit. Now again, we're going to need to EQ this. I want to take out a lot of that noise in the higher end. And this is supposed to sound sort of muddy and dirty, so we don't have to do too much with it. But actually what we can do now that we've taken out some of the higher end is add some saturation to bring back some of the higher frequencies. So we just... And again, we just throw in a bass guitar, really simple. And then the final thing to add is just going to be some sort of swell effect. Use it for the intro, for a hook. In Shook Ones Part 2, it's a Quincy Jones sample, but you want something that like has movement to it, and then you just chop it and repeat it, and it'll give a cool effect. So I'm going to look for something that can work there. Then we'll play the final beat and see what you think.
Off the realness, we be the infamous, you heard of us. Official Queensbridge murderers, the mob comes equipped for warfare. Beware of my crime family who got enough shots to share for all those who wanna profile and pose. Rock you in your face, stab your brain with your nose bone. You all alone in these streets, cousin. Every man for theyself in his land, we be gunning and keep them shook crews running like they supposed to. They come around, but they never come close.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you leave a like and let me know what other videos you want to see in the comments. And if you want to see another Mobb Deep tutorial, check out this video right here.
Speak the wrong words, man, and you will get touched. You can put your whole army against my team, and I guarantee you it'll be your very last time breathing. Your simple words just don't move me. You're minor, we major. You're all up in the game and don't deserve to be a player. Don't make